are sponsored by Shop G&O for the following season, everybody. Make sure you're checking out their brand new website launching on the 5th of May. If you sign up and become part of the members club, it's a £25 membership club, absolutely free, everybody. You can only get it through one Leeds. Competitive rates across the site as well. Better than Amazon, Vinted, and eBay. Make sure you check out Shop G&O. It is an e-commerce site which is tailored for all of your needs. Also, everybody, we are sponsored by Job Match Group. Talking about tailoring, make sure you check out this. It's got very specific job needs tailored to all of your every single needs. Make sure you check it out, everybody. Launching on the 6th of May. Well worth it. Finally, we're sponsored by the lads at Match Bingo. £2 per card, £5 for the price of 4. Get involved every match day, everybody. The QR code is in the corner. And let's get into the show, shall we? Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Conor McGilligan. This is the Rumour Mill. What is going on in your world? Let me know in the comment section below. We're back with discussion, discourse, debate, all of that lovely stuff. I hope you enjoyed the show last night. Me and Gabe on the hard line. If you haven't checked it out, everybody wants some bonus bits. And look, I'm even going as far as uploading it to a podcast network. Yes, you can find us on the TalkSport fan network, everybody, as well. We'll be appearing on there throughout the season. Thank you for TalkSport fan network for sponsoring the channel. But we also now, down to TalkSport, we're able to upload our stuff free of charge to Spotify and Apple. Make sure you're checking that out, everybody. Really appreciate that. If you're on your walk, you're chilling out, make sure you do so. We're back here with your latest news. We're back here with a bit of conversation, everybody. So it's going to be a bit of an in-detail chat this morning. There's not too much to discuss when it comes to rumours, but what there is there's a few outgoings which we need to talk about. I want to talk about the profile of players. I want to talk about the way Leeds United need to go about this transfer window, how I disagree with Gabe last night, and me and Gabe had a little bit of a chat off air. The hardline is Gabe's show. It is his show. I simply participate. But yeah, I disagreed with a few of his things last night, as I'm sure you guys have seen if you did watch it. And we're going to speak about obviously speak about the bits coming up. So make sure, as I say, everybody, you're tuning in, slapping a like on the video. And hello, Tim's in the building. Hey, Tim, how's it going, mate? Mark says, morning, Connor. Leo Roman, goalkeeper from Mallorca. He'd be my choice. Lee's in the building. Knox is in the building. Hey, mate. How's it going? Tom Goddard. Oh my God. Goodall. Sorry, Tom. Normally I get that name right, apparently. Apparently that's difficult for me this morning. Morning, Connor. Can't believe I finally made it to a live vid. Shout out to you, mate. How's it going, buddy? Morning. Tom's here. Steve, Aaron, Rune. Hello, my friend. Dave Dids. How you Dids? How's it doing, mate? Good to see you in here. Daryl's in here as well. Hey, mate. Connor, late as usual. Listen, guys, you got to give me a little bit. You got to give me a little bit of a pass. You can see the graphics on the screen. There's research that goes into these videos. 10 o'clock every morning doing these, get the thumbnail sorted, everything sorted. It takes a long time. We were live last night until about 10 p.m. as well. So stay with me a little bit. I was trying. White Snake, how you, mate? How's it going, buddy? Good to see you in here. Clark's in the building as well. Possibly the best name we've seen recently. Clark. I think so. Clark Rivers, we've had Bowden Llewellyn. We've had a couple of really good ones as well. I always go on about Bowden's name. It's a cracking name. It's Bowden Llewellyn, the Welsh warrior. Okay, let's talk about everything, shall we? Let's get into a few of the rumours to start off with. You can see the little carousel on the side, everybody, of which we're going to be speaking about today. So I wanted to immediately speak about the players of which Leeds United are apparently interested in. Something to bear in mind is the fact that these leagues don't end immediately. We've got sort of maybe 8 to 9 days until Serie A, La Liga, Bundesliga. Obviously, the championship finishes on the 24th. We've got time until these leagues finish. And why is that important? Why are you saying that, Connor? Well, because transfers will probably progress after that point. So right now, this week coming up, we'll hear bits and bats. It's rumours. But in terms of consolidation, in terms of links that we can actually establish, we're kind of looking at that and thinking, yeah, maybe not right yet. So let's get into some of those rumours. Jamie Vardy wants to stay in the Premier League. That is a quote I saw this morning. That is a quote I kind of want to talk about. There was rumours of him going to Wrexham, a championship club. That's been rubbished on the Leicester side. It's also been rubbished by the general media as well. Jamie Vardy wants to stay in the Premier League. Now, 39 next year, I believe. Oh, God. We're going to get into it in a little bit. My specific opinions on maybe experienced players and what Leeds need to be really, really careful of, and hopefully the detail in that, which I've been working on all morning, will give you guys a little bit of understanding as to why maybe just the experienced players and us going for that might be the wrong option. Jamie Vardy for me is a no. It's a no. He's done okay this season for Leicester, probably one of their better players. For me, there's a lot of context as to why Jamie Vardy coming to Leeds doesn't work. And a lot of it is based on the premise of the fact that he's on, 130 grand a week at Leicester. You got to look at the PSR constraints that we're under, the fact that wage does go against, obviously, the revenue that the club brings in when it comes to PSR. We have to be very, very careful with that. Obviously, it goes against your transfer budget as well, because wage and transfer budgets are simultaneous. I think Vardy, good player 5 years ago, we can have a conversation about it. Right now, not for me. I think there's way better options out there, and I think we're maybe looking at Jamie Vardy for his career instead of Jamie Vardy in the here and now, of which, as I say, he's not had a bad season, but I think there's so many things that you need to take into consideration when you bring in these players in for a Leeds United campaign in the Premier League. I think we've got to talk a little bit more about that later. Vardy, no way, says Nomo Refill. Shout out to you, mate. Dan says Vardy scores goals. Good morning, Connor. So I've seen on news now that Leeds are close to signing McAtee. Daniel, thanks for the donation, buddy. I really hope that we sign Kelleher and Costa Simicast with the latter to provide competition for Firpo. Thanks, Daniel. Always see you donating, mate. Top man. Really appreciate that. Morning from Bishop Thorpe. Hey, Lee. Not seen any Bishop Thorpe Whites before. I think it was Cotman Thorpe Whites, but not Bishop Thorpe. Shout out to you, buddy. Morning all. Hey, Lee. Hello. Andrew's in the building. Hey, from Melbourne. Graphics are a class edition. Thanks, Knox. It's a lot, mate. It's a lot to work on every morning, so I appreciate that. I'm trying to constantly improve the channel, mate, so thank you so much, buddy. Mickey says, morning, Connor. Would you Trossard, maybe ambitious? Slightly ambitious, I'd say, but it's a good option, mate. Danny said, smash the like and subscribe, please. Yeah, please make sure you do so, buddy. Let's move on to the next one, shall we? James Milner. Another one of which we're kind of looking at and we're thinking to ourselves, yes, James Milner coming back home, potential, would we go in for him? Would it make a lot of sense? The rumor is this morning, everybody, and I've kind of touched on it just a little bit, is that Milner will apparently be looking to effectively solidify himself. Let me just add this player stats. Here we go. There we go. James Milner will effectively be looking to solidify himself as with an extension at Brighton and then a coaching role, according to reports from down south. Now, once again, we're going to get into this in a little bit, but all of these players are fitting a very, very similar bracket. And Joe Donahue did an article not long ago about the hybrid strategy that Leeds will deploy in the Premier League. And I think it was a really good article from Joe. We're going to get into that in just a little bit. But I think the more interesting strategy right now, or the more interesting talking point, is the players that are potentially leaving Leeds United for said amount of money. James Milner. I like Milner. I would have loved us to go in for him last time we're in the Premier League, obviously when he was at Liverpool, but he was featuring for Liverpool. I think right now at 39 years of age, once again, Milner's not going to be coming for a free payday. We've got to be careful with his wage structure and PSR again and how that will affect Leeds United's transfer strategy going forward. I'm not 100% sure. I think it's a little bit of a risky situation for me there. No, Milner, 3 years ago, maybe. Yeah, 100%. The channel is always improving. Great. So thanks so much, Brian. I really appreciate that, mate. Tractor Boy James says, PSR really hurts promoted teams, and parachute payments means relegation teams have a significant advantage. It's a horrible financial state. Ipswich fan, hope you break the mold and stay up. Thank you so much, mate. There's context as to why Ipswich really struggled as well. I completely understand that. Rune says, Kelleher overpriced. Bobby says, we need experience. But people seem to just want anyone at all. People said they'd take Ben Mee, and he's almost 36. Yeah, Bob, we're going to get into that in just a little bit, mate, in terms of, I think, for me, what we kind of need to be looking at and why we need to be looking at these. Ooh, we don't want that one up. Why we need to be looking at these certain instances. Another one, the other three, let's just compile it all into one, everybody, shall we? Suchek, You can see on screen now that it cost Leeds 10 to 15 million quid. He's got 2 years left on his deal at West Ham United. I don't know why this is up. This was we are not interested in any of these players, guys. Let me just move that. As you can tell, it's the first graphic learnings of myself. So apologies that way. Bamford's not leaving to Arsenal for 80 million. I was figuring stuff out beforehand, so apologies if you did see that. So yeah, they're all kind of in the same bracket for me. The interesting thing when it comes to Wilson is he's on 46 grand a week, according to a few bits online that I've looked at. Obviously, he's free in the summer. I thought Wilson would be on a hell of a lot more money, to be honest with you, but obviously it's an existing contract. Souček is on 90 grand a week. Kufal, two of the West Ham boys, who were brought in from Slavia Prague for a combined fee of around 6 million quid. I think that is insane recruitment, and a very similar recruitment I think Leeds United should deploy in this window when it comes to the hybrid strategy of recruitment in terms of experience and just profile-based players. I look at Souček and Kufal and think to myself, Kufal wouldn't be a bad squad runner for me. I don't think he'd be a bad option. Souček's 30 years of age. Once again, context. There's got to be context applied to a lot of these situations. And we are going to get into that, everybody. I don't want to just keep waffling about what this context is, but I'm going to bring in other clubs, other examples. And the last one that I wanted to speak about as well when it comes to Leeds United is Hugo Bueno as well. We've not put him on the sheet, but interestingly enough, Ryan Aït-Nouri is apparently now a solid link to Man City. Looks like Man City are gonna extend a serious offer to Wolves. Now, if Wolves do let Ryan Aït-Nouri go, there is a massive likelihood that Hugo Bueno will be sticking around. Obviously, he's had a loan season at Feyenoord and been really impressive this season. So it looks like he might be sticking around at Wolves for the foreseeable future if Aït-Nouri is to leave, and that's likely apparently this window. James McAtee, there's been a lot of conversation about McAtee as well in this window. I saw something from Leeds Live saying that the article headline was Leeds getting closer to Man City winger. And the article, then you read the article, and yeah, we all know what the article is comprised of. It is not Leeds United being linked and getting any closer to James McAtee. It is just sort of rumour-based bits, and yeah. I get it. A good headline sells. I understand that, but it's just a completely false headline. And I'd also argue that McAtee isn't a winger. So, yeah, I'm not 100% sure that there's any sort of foundation within that. If you guys aren't aware of who James McAtee is, he's a Manchester City player. The interesting part of James McAtee is he didn't come on at the weekend, and they brought on a young Argentinian lad with an exceptional pedigree. McAtee didn't come on, and this young lad did, and he's never played for Man City. So that signifies the end as well for me with McAtee at Man City. But 35 million quid, as you can see on here. Kelleher is 40 million quid as well. Those rumours are still going around this morning. However, they've sort of gone a little bit quieter. So, yeah. In the future, I don't see us doing that. Mike says the Premier League is not for old men. Look at De Bruyne. Even with the quality, he's struggled this season. Hey, Con, how are we? Hey, mate, how's it going? Rye, I think we've spoken about this before. Mate, I am going to do like a dream Premier League window for myself. Dewsbury Hall was definitely up there, mate. Morning from Bramall, Stockport. Shout out to you, Chris Osborne. How's it going, mate? McGinn was another wild Gabe take, mate. I don't think, I love him, but I'm not sure. We've had this conversation off air. I'm not sure he understands that wage structure does affect PSR. So you come on, it's like FIFA for Gabe. We had Grealish, Paredes, we've had McGinn last night. Bellardi, I agree with him with Bellardi, by the way, being an unbelievable signing from Marseille, but we're chatting about it last night, and I don't agree with Gabe, and that's a lot of the context of this video as well. I love that man to pieces, but I disagree with him on a lot, but he is one of my best mates. So it's one of those, really, but that's what football's all about, everybody. Of course it is. Now let's get into the context of what we need to talk about today, and just moving a little bit away from the rumour mill as such. Danny Murphy was speaking on Match of the Day 2 this morning, actually, and I wrote it down in my notes, and he was speaking about legs and athleticism. And I've mentioned this several times on my videos about Leeds having to get that basically in the midfield in particular for me. And the reason behind that is because athleticism is absolutely key in the Premier League, because teams will just run over you. And the most important position, in my opinion, is that midfield, especially in the Premier League. It's the IQ, it's the legs, it is that physical prowess, it's speed, it's being able to be combative in there and be successful ultimately in your duels, and you win the game in midfield. That is why, in my opinion, you've got the likes of Newcastle who've been so successful this season. It's not the likes of Jacob Murphy, even though he's had a brilliant season at Newcastle, who has been the reason. It's not the likes of Gordon, in my opinion. Isak's obviously a little bit of an anomaly up there, but it's not even the likes of Dan Burn, etc. You get where I'm going here. Lewis Hall, who's had an unbelievable season, but I think it is that midfield. It's the consistency of Bruno Guimaraes, Joe Linton, and Sandro Tonali, who's been the best six in the division this season, in my opinion. There is three players there who not only are technically gifted, but have legs, and they will run over Leeds United. Absolutely run over Leeds United, and that's what we're expecting. These are top level players, but you can match them in athleticism. You can match them in legs by good recruitment, and that's where someone like Sean Longstaff comes into the picture. I think it would make sense for 10 to 12 million quid. I think my little marker on the experience, Longstaff's 27, obviously needs to be filling in a club right now, of which we'd look in and we'd say, wow, that would be a really good sign that he can develop at this club. It's not far away from home. He's not on outrageous wages. It'd make a lot of sense as well for Newcastle's PSR, not that we care about that, but still in terms of selling him. So apparently they're looking at 10 to 15 million quid. I would rather go out and get a Longstaff than a Souček, to be honest with you. But we've got to be really careful with this whole experience thing. We look at Brentford when they first came up. We look at Brighton when they first came up. There were key signings in these. And the reason I mention these two in particular is because the San Francisco 49ers want to deploy a data-led recruitment strategy. I've mentioned several times here that I think the recruitment should be led by a sporting director. I think then Daniel Farker should give the decision on these players, but you have to have a sporting director-led recruitment strategy, in my opinion, in the Premier League, which the likes of, Matthew Benham has employed at Brentford. You've got obviously Tony Bloom doing the exact same thing at Brighton. Now, are we going to be able to replicate that immediately? Absolutely not. But you look at Sunderland and the way they're going in the Championship, they're trying to replicate and emulate what Brighton and Brentford are doing in terms of looking at specific players on the continent, buying them in, looking at resale value, looking at continuity, but also looking at the attributes that can transition to the top level. And I think Sunderland have done that really well when you look at expenditure. They're probably the next Brighton, next Brentford, if they do make it up to the Premier League with KLD and their recruitment strategy. Leeds are trying to emulate that as well with AI. We're trying to replicate that with AI being a force of our recruitment as well, according to reports, which is exactly what Brighton do. And I like that. But you look at when Brentford and Brighton came up, there's this whole notion right now that experience, this is what Gabe was saying last night, in a sense, even though he's mentioning Bellardi and others. And I disagree with him. And it's fine to disagree in football, of course it is. But I think it's got to be data-led. I don't want Leeds United to go down the experience route wholly for recruitment. Leeds have to, and as Joe Donahue mentioned earlier with the hybrid strategy, Leeds have to target profiles, not just proven Premier League players. I want us to target profile players for the Premier League, which a lot of the teams recently have done. You even look at Nottingham Forest. In their first season, they brought in Jesse Lingard on a free. Dean Henderson, I think, was on loan. There wasn't a mass of Premier League experience brought in because they know it's not going to benefit the club long term. It's a short-term strategy. But the effects of bringing in these players, wage structures, harmony within the group at points, potentially, there can be long-term effects on the club. You've got to be really, really sensible when you're bringing in players who have experience, because a lot of them demand very, very high wages as well. And a lot of them are on the decline when it comes to their physical output at the top level. So when you look at Brentford's first season in the Premier League, they brought in Christopher Ayer, I believe, who was the centre-back, who was brilliant for them for the period of time. They brought in Johan Visser from Lorient for 8 million quid. These are signings of which are really decent signings for the Premier League, but you go out to the continent and you bring them in for good value. You look at their attributes, you look at the profiles, and you think, how can they fit into the Premier League? How can they fit into the Premier League? And I think that's the real way of going about it. You look at Brighton when they first came up, another Brentford player as well, Frank Onyeka. He came in, he was brilliant in that midfield for them, combative and athletic, that key word again. Brighton, when they first came up to the Premier League, they spent 2.6 million on Pascal Gross. Pascal Gross was unbelievable for Brighton. Probably the best signing, arguably the best signing they've ever made. They brought in Matt Ryan from Valencia, goalkeeper, shoring things up at the back. They didn't go out and spend a mass amount on Premier League proven players, because there's been a hell of a lot of those, in these periods of which they could have taken a risk on. They haven't. They've trusted the data model. They've trusted it. And they've gone out, they've brought profile proven players that can switch into the Premier League, not Premier League proven profiles. I think that's really key. Even with Forest, even with the overhaul they've had, they've not gone down that route that much. Brentford also signed Christian Eriksen in 21-22, 100%. Yeah. Let's have a look. Hey, Con, I haven't caught a live in a while. Thanks for all the content. No worries, buddy. No worries. Kufel, Souček, and Cresswell. I don't want to be West Ham's feeder club. Yeah, 100%. McTominay would be decent, in my opinion, but he'll be playing Champions League next season. Would you look at Scott McTominay? I don't think it's realistic, mate. Hayden Hackney, I think it's a really good shout. Mega Chan. The way Palace set up against City is how we will have to adapt. Steve's in here. Stripper's in here. Are you guys? Look at you, Steve. You're getting more attention than me, mate. Good lad. like they did with Tanaka. Exactly, mate. I think you're spot on with that. They've just got to go down this route. And I understand people effectively like panicking a little bit about the Premier League proven players, but I don't think you want these players just starting continuously in this team. There needs to be rotation. Maybe a couple brought in, but we've got to be really sensible with what those couple are. There was conversations about Callum Wilson last night. It's very dependent on what happens with Joseph. It's very dependent on what happens with Bamford. If you're not able to shift these players, I think we're going to be able to shift Joseph, but if you're not able to shift Bamford, what does that then mean when it comes to the pecking order of the strikers? Because I think we'd keep hold of Peru. I think that'll happen. And then you bring in a starting striker. Is that starting striker going to be Callum Wilson? He's missed 20 games this season with 2 injuries, and he's 34 next season. We've got to be really careful. Really, really careful with how we go about this, in my opinion. But yeah, Pascal Gross was someone who I kind of looked at in Brighton's first season and thought, what a signing that would be. That was in terms of their progression as a football club. But yeah, the focus on profile signing is absolutely huge. Some successful clubs who stay up implement this strategy. And I think I think the other tick box as well has got to be continuity with the manager. And I think they've given him that now. Okay. I've obviously got some things with Daniel Farke previously, of which I've been like, but there's also been a massive grey area with the manager for me. And it was based on a meritocracy and he delivered promotion. Am I completely convinced by Daniel Farke? No, but that's my opinion. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't keep him in. I mentioned at the very beginning of the transfer window in the end of the season that I would keep him in and I would give him a chance in the Premier League, but I think it's got to be on a short leash. But when you actually look at the success rate of clubs when they've come up, a lot of the successful clubs have given continuity to that manager. They've given continuity. So now you've got to back Daniel Farke. The club have got to back Farke. The 49ers have given him a confidence backing in the press, public. That's fantastic. You back him now then. You back him and you trust in Daniel Farke. And that is another way. It's a surefire way of which we kind of look at successful clubs that have just come up. And it works. It's the ones that stick with the manager, the ones that stick and maintain continuity. And that's something that we've got to look at right now. And then you look at the profile signings as such. Is Vardy a Farke striker? No. Is Souček a Farke player? If Farke doesn't adapt, which I think he will, but Leeds are and Norwich implemented this as well even in their Premier League campaigns. They tried to play a possession-based style. Souček isn't that. Souček isn't based on a possession-based. He's not that's not the profile of player that Souček is. He's not that great on the ball. Jamie Vardy, the ball in behind the defender. Is that a Daniel Farke style of football? I don't think it is. It's a very, very big transition. It's a move away from Peru. It's a big move away from Pukki. If you're looking at the archetype of what's been successful with Farke before, Vardy isn't a Daniel Farke player, and that's why you've got to get profile players who fit into the manager's tactical system, and you've got to look at that as well. So yeah, cheers, Rich. it is a classic one. But yeah, I think we have got to look at free loans. I mentioned Ugochukwu in who I would sign in terms of utilizing loan players. He was on loan at Southampton, but he's an outstanding midfielder. Fits all the brackets when it comes to physicality, athleticism, legs, and there could be a potential for Leeds United to maybe go and sign him on a permanent, but very similar to that of Lavia. And I just kind of look at players like that and think, I think that would be a decent addition for Leeds United. I mean, we'll just get a few of his stats up here. Just when he's the guy I've mentioned previously. Ugochukwu, let's just get him on here. There you go. You know, someone like Lesley Ugochukwu, he's a Chelsea player, legs for days, and yeah, physical, combative player who would fit in. That is a lone player with the vision of maybe getting him on a permanent signing. That would work for me. Would definitely work for me. So you can utilize the free transfer and loan market, but I'm not convinced with the free market that I've seen. I'll be honest. I'm not convinced with Wilson. I'm not convinced with Decore. I'm not convinced with Vardy. We've mentioned it before, and I've come on here and I've said maybe they'll be a good signing, but on reflection, I'm just not sure it's the right way of going forward. I think you've got to get experienced players in, but I think just focusing primarily on experience and maybe focusing too much on experience when it comes to the likes of those three players is a big misstep and something that successful clubs just haven't done. So I think the data analysis to identify potential is key. Absolutely key. One I was thinking about as well was when Bournemouth came up in 2015-16. I've no idea why it came to my head. They signed Artur Buric, the keeper, of which was a madman, but his leadership was prevalent and he was an insane signing for them on a free. It really, really worked for them. So it's just free signings like that of which Leeds United can look at, and if they're able to get the profile right, it'll really work for me. Now let's see if I get the transfer centre right, and if I get this wrong, have I got? Hold on, let's have a look. So make you guys laugh if it's wrong. Oh, let's have a look. Let's have a look. Has he got it right? He's got the wrong one. It's Salah's coming to Leeds again. Bamford for 80 million to Arsenal. There we go. Okay, so the caution that we've got to have, I think the caution that we've got to have is Forest. Okay, a lot of people are looking at Forest and thinking they broke the rules. They signed 21 players. I think the big thing is it's going to impact playing style. It'll impact the harmony of the squad and the cohesive nature of the squad as well. We've just got to be really careful when we're looking at that. And the Premier League minutes of just players that have played there, and we get them in because of that, I think it's wrong. I think you've got to go to the continent and, as I've said, bring in those profiles of which can simultaneously translate into the Premier League in terms of attributes, physicality, pace, you know, all these little bits of which you should be on like an AI recruitment data-led strategy base anyway. And I'm sure that is happening at Ellen Road. But the exciting thing about this for me with the 49ers is they have this data-led approach of which does very, very much fit into the modern day world. And obviously it emulates that of the successful clubs as well, in my opinion. So we've got to assess players' strengths, and I've mentioned here as well, managerial continuity is absolutely key. So, yeah, with Milner, Vardy, Souček in particular, I'd be a little bit worried about their injury risk, the physical decline. And I think we should be targeting players on low wages and profile fit players. We look at Bijol, Jaka Bijol, who Leeds have apparently been really linked to when it comes to the Udinese centre-back. Belardi, dependent on the price of him at Marseille, will be an unbelievable signing as well. Ugochukwu, who I've mentioned as well. Dan Ndoye, who scored the winner for Bologna against AC Milan in the cup final the other day, but could Leeds prize him away for a decent fee. Obviously, I've mentioned Marseille before, but I'm not 100% sure that would work. Dan says Angel Gomez would be class. Yeah, Dan, Angel Gomez is someone who I've looked at previously. I'm just not sure how much that would cost. 24 at Lille? He's been insane, hasn't he? I'm just not 100% sure that would be a viable option for Leeds United. I feel Tanaka was a Farke signing with Largy and Schmidt being data-led opportunities and don't get the minutes. Might end up being Farke-led players and Byram getting a new deal. I think Tanaka we'd looked at before Farke, mate, but I could be wrong on that. Isn't Napoli's Alex Meret available on a free this summer? He'd be a great keeper choice. Simply Tariq Lamptey from Brighton Hove Albion on a free to provide competition for Bogle. Don't think that's a bad shout as well, mate. Once again, Kyle Walker-Peters is someone who we're looking at, who should be looking at, I should say anyway. Pat says, is Joseph Defo leaving, not being loaned out? I would suggest that if you bring in like a Callum Wilson, right? If we bring in, I'm trying to think of how this would work. So if you've got 4 strikers, let's say, which I don't think Leeds will have, but if you've got 4 strikers, let's say you've got Callum Wilson, Peru, Bamford, and Joseph, that's obviously not going to stand. But Joseph's minutes with an experienced striker coming in, this is the thing with bringing in experience as well. When you've got potential like Joseph, and you are going to block his development, so he kind of has to go out on loan. So the striker picture for Leeds is going to be really, really interesting, and how we do this. But I think we've got to be really, really careful when it comes to letting some players go. And you know, are we going to let Matteo Joseph just go? I mean, it would help us when it comes to PSR, but so would Nonso going. That would help when it comes to PSR. You know, we saw the likes of Newcastle having to do this very recently when it comes to Elliot Anderson, you know, letting go of effectively one of their own, which kind of Matteo Joseph, I kind of categorize as that. And having to do that in alignment with PSR. So we've just got to be really careful with what we do, because what you don't want is Leeds United going into this season coming up with, for me anyway, just loads of Premier League experienced bodies. Because what people, for me, aren't taking into consideration is how successful they've been in the Premier League, the physical decline and the high wages. I think it's chaos. It's absolute chaos. Jamie Vardy coming in, I think, will be a nightmare for me, you know? But you've got to look at where this is lying, I think. Jamie says Bogle and Lamptey, very similar profile for me. I think we need a more defensive right back option. I don't think Kufal would be a bad. You know, Kufal's obviously the West Ham lad, 32 years of age. I don't think he'd be a bad option. Played yesterday, last game for West Ham. I don't think it'd be bad, but it's got to be a rotation option. I just think we've got to be so careful with everybody getting excited about these Premier League proven players. You got right. Do you need it? Let's have a quick. I'm spitballing here. How many Premier League experienced players did Brentford have? None, I would say. It was the first time in the Premier League, so they'll have none. When Brighton came up, none. Forest, when they came up, I don't think they had any. Bournemouth, Fulham, maybe, because they'd just been in the Premier League, but it'll have been little. So Premier League experience is a thing, obviously, but that is not the be all and end all at all. I would much rather have a few players maybe in the background who can have sparing minutes. But once again, you've got to be careful when it comes to PSR and the wage structure. Players coming in and being part of that rotation option. You know, look at Josh Gilavoggi, him being a key example, but he was low wages, free transfer, championship application when it comes to him, and he struggled there even, didn't he? When we saw him at centre back and central midfield. But I think I would love it if Leeds went out and almost applied that same data model of which we've seen from the likes of Brentford and Brighton. I think a squad overhaul like Forest is a massive risk. I think that strategy is so risky, it's unbelievable. And they just stayed up again with 21 new players coming in. Got to be very, very careful, in my opinion. Luke says experience is one thing, but it needs to be the right character delivering it. Vardy seems more of a Saturday League vibes man. Barcelona of a lot of youngsters could be an option, mate. So Brighton, you know, the amount of players that we could get from Brighton who could just be a nice loan option for us for the season. Obviously not allowed to play against the parent club, but I don't think Brighton are going to be anywhere near us next season. Brighton's academy, or at least their under 19 structures, a couple of names in there that I will be looking at. Of which we'll make on the next next video. But once again, Ugochukwu, just because he's been at Southampton doesn't mean he's not going to be a top player. You know, very, very similar traits to Lavia, as I've mentioned several times, and gives us such a presence in that midfield. We've got to improve. We've got to get legs. We've got to get physicality in that midfield. We have, and is experience a bad thing? Absolutely not. But we've got to be really, really careful with the right experience, and we've got to make this meticulous. But absolutely, what should be heavy? When Joe Donahue mentioned it should be a hybrid system, he's mentioned a hybrid. Okay, I'm talking. You know, if Leeds are to bring in 12 players, 3 of them max, and you don't want them starting. You start these players, we're going down. We're going down, and it's the harsh reality of it. But there's got to be, for me, a 70 to 80% blend of players from the continent who can transition into Premier League football and have the attributes to do so. That's what the Premier League's been comprised of anyway for the best part of 10 to 15 to 20 years anyway. Players coming in from the continent have been excellent. There's so many examples as well. So yeah, a lot of really good examples in there. Rai says, do you think Burkhardt is possible? I don't, mate. I don't. And that's we kind of mentioned him on the channel years ago, didn't we? But no, I don't think it's possible. I mean, he's going to be the next German number 9, mate. It was a bit of a free for all signing from me. But you have to pay big bucks for a striker, or you don't. And you once again you go to the continent. I've mentioned before, Johan Visser came to Brentford from Lorient, 8.5 million quid. If your recruitment strategy is good enough, you can get it. Look, we've mentioned Balerdi yesterday, okay? We've mentioned Balerdi from Marseille, okay? Big link to Leeds. 40 million quid. 40 million quid. Look at Forest's centre-back partnership. Milenkovic, Murillo. Nowhere near it. Nowhere near that price bracket. I don't think you have to spend that money. I really don't. You don't have to spend 40 million quid on Kelleher. I think there's just this notion right now that you have to just, excuse my French, but spunk all this money on these sort of players. Don't get me wrong, Balerdi will be an unbelievable sign. Of course he would. But it's a lot of money that this isn't experience here but I would love Balerdi coming in 100%. It'd be amazing signing. But then you've got like your Jaka Bijol at Udinese, who's going to be, you know, a fraction of the price and arguably has more potential than Balerdi at 26, with Bijol being, you know, what he is, and this, that, and the other. To be fair, I think they're actually the same age. But there are examples out there of younger centre backs for better value who've got high potential, high ceiling. So I think it's a lot of it is down to a recruitment strategy of which you can mix the two, of course, but you can't be spending massive money. You know, you look at the examples, the quality examples of Premier League level in their first season, you know, who've come up, they've not all spent that money. The 20 million euro release clause on Burkhardt is amazing, but I agree. Yeah, there's a few. I think Bayern might be looking at him as well. Dave did says, no need to reinvent, add players to match our DNA. No to reinvent, add players to match. I agree, mate. And you kind of look at what we've done as well, you know, as Steve quite rightly said, you know, likes of Tanaka, you know, the recruitment that's been brought in over the past season has been unbelievable. And this is kind of what I was saying. I wasn't trying to, you know, throw my dummies out the pram when it came to this, but this is what I was saying with the 49ers in the summer window. They recruited that well that we didn't have to dip our toe into the market. And if we're being brutally honest, and what we're screaming for on this channel for the best part of 5-6 months was that if you took the goalkeeper out and just put a sub goalkeeper in, a standard goalkeeper in, Leeds would have probably, in my opinion, we'd have broken the 110 point mark. I think we're that good this season. And that kind of, you got to strip it back, look at the bigger picture and see that's because of the summer recruitment. You know, we eclipsed 3 first-year parachute payment teams, you know. And I understand the lucrative value of the wages that we're paying and all this sort of stuff, but we still did that. You know, we're still able to do that. And that's because of the owners. It's because of working around certain financial restraints and strategies and having a data-led recruitment plan as well. You kind of look at Tanaka and you think, we brought him in from Dusseldorf for 3.4 million quid, and he's the best player, in my opinion, in the championship. Best player in the championship for 3.4 million quid. That is exactly what we need to try and emulate in the Premier League, in my opinion. Morning, Connor. Morning, One Leeds family. Hello, Rad. How's it going, mate? How's it going? Furious' thoughts on days then made it again. Yeah, once again, it's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee with Maida, and I think it's the worry a little bit with the SPL. It's that transition, isn't it, into the Premier League. I don't mind it, but once again, 30 million quid, mate. Can you spend 30 million quid better? Can you? You know, are you able to do that? You know, I can see a load of suggestions here as well, but loan signings, free transfers are imperative. They really are. They really are. But you've also got to be really careful. Now, Bamford's on here going to Wrexham. There's a lot of chat about that as well. You know, I can't imagine him fetching more than that. Apparently, their move for Jamie Vardy, of which was rumoured, has failed. So they are looking for an experienced striker. Now we're kind of looking at the market value of Bamford, 3.5 million quid. Yeah, perfect. I think he's got 2 years left on his Leeds deal, which is just, this is why it's nice Angus Kinnear been out the club as well. Him and Orta been out the club, because they're not just going to give 4-5 year deals out like Smarties. But that's impressive for me, that if they were to come in for him, obviously we get Bamford off the books, get Bamford's wages off the books as well. What clauses are in his contract? Will there be something triggered as to, if he's a Premier League player, his wage structure will increase? Not 100% sure with that. But you're looking at Betis and Matteo, I could see that potentially happening. And then you look at Junior Firpo, there's been Atletico Madrid and apparently Lazio from the Italian sources are the front runners for him right now. So keep an eye on that one. Of course. Matteo Joseph shouldn't be sold. I don't want to see him play for another club like Max Dean, and I'm sure he'll be fine on loan over the winter, depending on how he gets on this season. Yeah, 100%, mate. So signing Milner would count as homegrown still, wouldn't it? I guess technically it would, mate. Wayne says, if we're spending 30 million, I'd rather spend it on Umar Saleh. Nice name, mate. Good name. Don't let Gabe find out Rodrigo might be sold to Real Madrid. Gabe's amazing. I'm still not fully sure he understands PSR, though. Connor, are you wearing pajama bottoms? Can you see them? Can you see my pajama bottoms? Stop looking. Can you see that? How can you see my pajama bottoms? But yes, I am, mate. Thank you. I am. I've been working all morning, mate, and I've just kept them on for comfort. But thanks for noticing. I didn't even know I'd stood up. Are you in my house? OIB says, think Longstaff will be the correct type of experience that we need. Got the experience, but also has a lot of his career ahead of him. Yeah, I think he's probably the one who I'd look at and think, okay, there's going to be a bit of a bigger wage structure there. Of course, when you're looking at Longstaff, he might want an increase, but for 10 to 12 million, what you've got to do, guys, is include the 10 to 12 million quid of which we might spend on Longstaff. Not only with competition, because that might increase, but with his wage structure as well. With his wages as well, because these are two things of which will impact PSR. Firpo get Lazio on a free, and Nuno Tavares leave them after loan back to Arsenal. We could get him for 20. Ryan says, I saw Pat's interview saying he's looking forward to the Premier, and he's proven he's better suited to the Premier League. I have a feeling. Well, Ryan, it shouldn't matter what Bamford wants. It really shouldn't matter with what Bamford wants. And just, look, we're not Sentiment FC. Bamford doesn't just get to stay in the Premier League because he thinks he's suited, and Bamford needs to leave this club. I like Pat, but yeah, needs to leave this club. I think we're all very aware of that. Wages and just cover it. We've got a striker there, of which is we need to move on to get effectively replacements in. And I'll be loaning Joseph out. I think that's the right way of doing it. I wouldn't be getting rid of him. But obviously, it depends on Leeds' PSR structure. Do they need to get rid of him? Bamford, yeah. And obviously, Willian Yonso is the one of which people are talking about him going out. I would try not to be letting him go, to be honest with you. Would you take Ballard, Connor? No, I would not. Don't think he's good enough, mate. Morning, Connor. Morning, all. Just catching a live for some time. Taking the little one to get to sleep. Loving the content as always. Keep it up. Good lad, Mike. Good lad. Hope you're all good, pal. It sounds like Bamford wants the MLS move. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the CBS interview is interesting. Dwayne says, definitely fancy Longstaff and Souček Con, depth and experience. Once again, mate, I think the experience we've just got to be careful with. Once again, Souček's on 90 grand a week. He's 30 years of age. No sell-on value for Leeds United whatsoever. No sell-on value when it comes to Vardy. No sell-on value when it comes to Decore. No sell-on value when it comes to Kufal. So these are all things that you need to take into consideration. The declining careers of all of them as well. Souček's not the Souček he was 3 years ago when he signed for West Ham. Nowhere near. And does it fit the style of play? Does it fit the manager's style of play? I don't think it does right now. Souček isn't great. Wouldn't be great in a possession-heavy team if we are to stick to that. Vardy is a running behind striker of which is declining, and that is his game. And Leeds don't really play that way anyway. See Peru and see Pukki previously. It's not really the Daniel Farke way. So obviously we think he's going to adapt Farke, but we're not 100% sure. Is Vardy really that striker, that profile of which would fit into Leeds' side? I don't think he is. Exciting times, mate. Loving the content, loving the rumours. Bring on the Prem. 100%, mate. We should be definitely excited about this, shouldn't we? Definitely should be excited. Yeah, definitely. Gerald Quansah on loan. Yeah, interesting. Not check that one out, mate. To be honest with you, we'd need to keep him away from Astrid Wet, wouldn't we? Which keeper is realistically like the club to bring in? I think 40 million for Keller is crazy good, but I think more like 25. And do you think Melee is sold? And how much do you think we get? I think for someone like Melee, you can still get really good value. We mentioned this in January when his stock was high. His agent is evidently very decent with the moves that he's been linked to. I think you could get a lot of money from LA still. I know our perception of him, but I think the experience. I think experience would sell as well. He's still a young keeper. He's had what 200 games for the club or whatever the hell it's been. He's had a fair few games for the club. All of them haven't been exceptional, of course, but I think you could get 10 to 15 million quid from LA. I think you could. Yeah, I think you could. Genuinely, I actually believe that. Which sounds mad, doesn't it? But And do you think Meslier sort of, how much do you think we get? I wouldn't be spending 25 million on a goalkeeper. I wouldn't be spending 25 million on a goalkeeper. I would be spending a lot less than that. And there is good value out there for goalkeepers, especially at Premier League level. I've mentioned this several times. I've got my pick, David Soria, who wouldn't be a lot of money. Wouldn't be a lot of money. He's been one of the outstanding keepers in La Liga. He's in contention for the Zamora Trophy, which I don't know if it's been given out yet. But yeah, there's options over there, especially on the continent. Everybody on the continent, the value for goalkeepers is so less than what is being quoted over here. Are the keepers like I look at David Soria? Okay, I look at David Soria at Getafe, who's been unbelievable this season, third best behind Oblak and Courtois. I look at him and I'm like, is he a better goalkeeper attribute-wise than Kelleher? Well, I don't know, but what I would say is in comparison, they've got very, very similar attributes. And if you want to just chuck that experience thing in, Soria's 32, but his contract expires next season. He's been outstanding this season. It's better value, isn't it? You'd be able to get him for a much better value. I don't think you need to spend extortionate amounts. And it comes back to the centre-back thing. Once again, you look at Milenkovic, you look at Murillo, outstanding centre-backs in the Premier League for Nottingham Forest, recently promoted. Not spent 40 million quid on Milenkovic, 30 million on Murillo. It's not happened. So I think we've got to be, I think I get the fans. I get the fans' perspective of it. I understand it, but I think we just got to be careful. Meslier, it's a lot of bad experience. Connor, who's paying 10 to 15 million quid? Well, Leeds apparently, if you are to believe rumours, knocked back very similar valuations for him in the summer. In the summer, apparently Marseille, according to their sources over there, were willing to spend that sort of money on him, and Leeds knocked it back. You know, effectively now, technically, he's a Premier League goalkeeper. So, yeah, I think you could. I think you could, mate. Yeah, I just want Maida. Anyone else is a bonus. Connor, wouldn't you keep Darlow, Wales number? I would, Justin. Yes, I would, mate. I'd definitely be keeping all the Darlow, but he'd be third keeper for me. No worry, Dave. No worry. James says, do you think Byron will be This is an interesting one. Thanks for reminding me, James. I was going to touch on this morning. There's been, obviously, the retained list was released. Byram. Look, he's played Premier League minutes before. He's, I guess, technically experienced. Would he almost fit into like the Liam Cooper, Joshua Gilavoggi role in terms of just being a presence around the group? I think he's 31 this year. I think he's my age, or he's 32 this year. So there's experience there, of course. And I know I've mentioned that experience shouldn't be the be all and end all, but is Byram just an obvious choice? I think my worry is, for Byram to stay, I would need him literally as fourth choice. If Byram plays in the Premier League and his rotation, with the greatest of respect, we are in deep trouble with the wingers at this level. So do I think he stays? I could see a world of which he stays in. Definitely. But we've just got to be so careful. We've got to be so careful. Yeah. Very, very careful. But to be fair, homegrown, which is important in the Premier League, of course. Mele's got 150 Premier League appearances or something. He's only 25 himself, 10 mil. Yeah, it's kind of where I'm at with it, really. Mele, good to see him in spirits on the bus, though. Relegation wages restored to 100%. Definitely. Cheers, Con. Great insight in that answer. Obviously, you know more football in Europe. I just watched Leeds. Yeah, I'm a bit of a weirdo, Render. I have a little studio here, and I've got a very legal streaming site, of which I just watch loads of football to get away from my missus, pretty much. Is she in? Cheap for the Bucks, homegrown box takes cover for the early cup rounds about as much as body will let him go. Yeah. Byron possibly happy to stay and be fourth choice. Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, I'm not going to waffle on for too long, everybody. I know there's a lot of people who've just joined, but you can watch this on the replay. We speak a little bit more consistently about what's going on at Leeds at the very beginning. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you enjoy these rumour mills. Apology, it's not the consolidation mill, but you know what it is when you come in here, everybody. It is we speak about rumours. We speak about, you know, the commitment Leeds have to them, and just so a lot of the time it's just discourse, and I'm interested to hear what you guys think on various bits. So listen, really appreciate you coming on by. Join me tomorrow on as well if you want, from 10, and I think we might have the debrief. We might have the debrief tonight, maybe. Maybe. Cheers, Mickey. My pajama bottoms will be changed. Don't worry, mate. It's kind of getting a bit weird now, Mickey. Chill out. Hey, guys, before you leave, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It's been an absolute pleasure. Let me know on all the rumors in the comment section below after this. It's been a pleasure, and I will see you on the other side. Cheers.